Yes, Smiling Friends, the show everybody loves, has a problem. And I'm not just saying this to be some contrarian who just has to hate the new big popular thing. I am a fucking sheep, and I too really like Smiling Friends. I'm not joking when I say that this show changed my life. If I hadn't seen Smiling Friends, I wouldn't have found all the other stuff the creators Zach Hadel and Michael Cusack have done, like the Positive Stream or their friend's gaming channel Oni Plays, which Zach frequently guests on, and even the admittedly slightly outdated Sleepy Cabin. I spent most of my late teens listening to these guys, and I'm not kidding when I say that these boys practically raised me. You know, in a not parasocial way. All of that's to say, I respect the shit out of these guys and eagerly awaited the second season of their show, just like anyone else. And after an agonizing 2-year wait, I sat down with my brother with absolutely no expectations whatsoever and watched the first episode. And immediately, something was off. It felt oddly dry and boring. I mean, it still had a lot of good laughs, but it just wasn't as engaging as season 1. Oh well, maybe episode 1 was just a fluke, and the next one will surely be better. This was pretty much when I'd accepted that I wasn't gonna enjoy the rest of the season. It felt oddly fake in a way, like someone else had written it and were just doing what they thought Hadel and Cusack would have done. It felt like a parody of Smiling Friends. Which is what I would have called this video if Season 3 hadn't come out. Season 3 is a big improvement over Season 2, but still not as good as the first one. It's good, but something has definitely changed. So what happened? Has the novelty just worn off? No. I hate that argument because I watched Season 1 like 4 times before I was able to breathe properly afterwards. No, I'm afraid this is something much more interesting than that. And it has something to do with the characters, which is what this whole video is about. So, grab a snack or work out, I don't know, it's your life, and let's get into the Smiling Friends character problem. So, according to Zach Hadel in an interview, they've kind of changed up their approach to writing with each season. Season 1 was pretty plot-driven, while Season 2 was much more improv-driven. Meaning they just kind of did whatever they thought was funny in the moment without really thinking too much about story. And now Season 3 is a mix of both. I had to rewatch the show again for this video, and yeah, no, it's very obvious in hindsight how much the show has changed. Like, going back to Season 1, I was surprised by just how many scenes there were where nothing really all that funny happens. They were just there to add to the character in that episode. Which might sound odd to point out, like, no shit, there's scenes to develop the characters. But Smiling Friends hasn't really done that in the last 2 seasons. Honestly, all of the pacing was also a lot different. Just a scene like them getting a job from the boss was much slower, with him creepily breastfeeding a child for a minute straight. Whereas a similar scene in Season 3 has this quick back and forth between characters before ending with the boss turning into a fucking Super Saiyan. And it's not just those scenes, both seasons pretty much feel like that all the way through. And I'm not saying either of them are better or worse, just different. Each of them with their own pros and cons. Like Season 1 I think could be a bit too sitcom-y in a way, only sometimes though. Whereas Season 3 is, well, I'll get to that later. First, I have to talk about Season 2. Now this one is, it's definitely more, it's kind of, it's shit, I'm sorry. I like this show, I really do, but I do not like this season. I know a lot of people loved it, and trust me, I really wanted to, but I can't. It's not complete shit, like, it's got its moments, but that's all they are, moments. The rest of it just feels like a cheap imitation of Season 1. Not that I actually think they were trying to copy it, I think it's just an unfortunate growing pain of them changing the way they write. As I said, Season 2 was much more improv-driven than the first one. So now instead of each episode being based on some structured out plot, it's improv together, which a lot of Season 1's best moments were those realistic improv bits, but the reason those realistic improv moments were so funny to me in the first place is because they only happened a few times per episode, so they caught me off guard. Now in Season 2, it just feels like they took all the unused improv and made it into the whole episode. Again, not that they actually did that, but that's what it feels like to me. Like they're trying too hard to recapture Season 1 without any of the shit that made that season so good in the first place. That being the characters. They just aren't the same anymore, they feel off. Season 3, however, does this all much better. I still don't think it quite lives up to how iconic the first one is, but it's a lot funnier than 2. But the characters still feel pretty dry outside of a few episodes and most of the B-plots for some reason. Less so than Season 2, but it's still there. And that's what this video is about. Smiling Friends has a character problem. Now, I'd say in my own little personal opinion that comedy is about surprising you, catching you off guard. And Season 1 did that so well that it gave me a horrible cough for a week afterwards. But a lot of Season 3 just doesn't surprise me in that same way. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely funny, but I wasn't struggling to catch my breath like the first one or the last episode of 2, which I'll talk about later. And it's because of the characters, they're just so dry now. They don't do anything anymore. Like in the Silly Samuel episode, all they do is stand there while Samuel yells for 11 minutes. Him and Charlie could just walk away and nothing would change. They used to be thoroughly tied into the episode. They had stakes in helping whatever wacky character they had. Pim and Charlie used to be the main focus of the episodes, but now they just sit there only doing what's necessary to progress to the next scene, while whatever wacky character of the week tries their hardest to be funny. They've become the side characters in their own show. They just don't surprise me or make me laugh anymore. Hell, they don't even entertain me anymore. They feel so one note now, it's like there's a big pull string they have for everything they say. Pim starts singing because that's his character, he's positive. They don't actually have any real want or motivation in the episode anymore, and so now they just say or do one-note things based on what they would have done in Season 1. That's why it feels like an imitation. Again, Season 3 fixes this for certain episodes, which I'll get to later, but for the most part it's still a problem. You know, they almost feel flanderized in a way, which if you somehow don't know what flanderized means, it's basically just what happened to every character in SpongeBob. Like the titular SpongeBob himself went from this naive, positive guy who just happened to really like his job, but also had lots of other interests, like tinkering with stuff and jellyfishing, to a lobotomized retard who's obsessed with his job and nothing else. Now, obviously, Pim and Charlie aren't nearly that bad, but that's exactly why it's so hard to show what I mean. It's a lot subtler than that, and I think most people wouldn't even notice how it's affecting the show. I said earlier that Season 1 was much more plot-driven, and I think this actually forced them to give each character something to do and build off of what they wanted, instead of what they do now, which is just improving the funniest thing that could happen to the characters. As a result, Pim and Charlie kind of just stand there while some funny situation happens around them. Then all that stuff happening to them, whether it's someone they're helping or some other character, has to go on overdrive to make the episode funny. And it can work sometimes, but it's mostly just uninspired jokes that try as hard as possible to be funny. It's just the same shit over and over with no real progression to any of it. They simply don't tie the characters into the episode, and it leaves everything with zero stakes whatsoever. Him and Charlie could just walk away whenever they want with no consequences. They don't have anything to do with the episode other than it's their job and they have to help him. In the pilot, if they didn't help Desmond, he was gonna fucking kill himself. And the whole episode was Pim trying tons of fun ways to show him how great life can be, as he slowly realizes how terrible his life actually is. And despite how dark that sounds, it was fucking hilarious. I think comedy and drama are a lot closer than most people realize. They both run on the same things like character motivation, arcs, and just conflict in general. The only difference is, instead of using that for some crazy Breaking Bad moment, they use it for jokes. Like the conclusion to Pim and Charlie's relationship falling apart in the Enchanted Forest was Mip falling into a spike and melting into goo. It's the same stuff as a drama, but they just don't take it seriously. Pim's character arc at the end of being all depressed is the punchline to the episode. All of that plot shit was the reason Season 1 was so inspired, because it's what led to all of the best moments. Same with my favorite episode in Season 3. I think the Mole Man episode was great, and that's because Pim and Charlie weren't these props who could leave whenever they wanted. There were stakes they had to escape. That's also why all the B-plots are so good in this season. The part in the Mother Nature episode with the boss and Alan had a whole thing with Alan needing to relax and enjoy his vacation, which leads to one of the best jokes in the show. Then you cut to Pim and Charlie and they have nothing. Why does Charlie want to find a cryptid? Because it's just his character. Why does Pim want to pick up the trash? Because he's nice, I guess. See what I mean? They don't have a single selfish desire. It makes everything they say or do, again, just feel like they have a pull string to say or do whatever they would have done before. Why not have Pim simply want to go out and enjoy the beautiful nature, but Charlie's stupid cryptid hunt gets in the way. Then they come across the trash on the ground and Charlie adds to it. This ruins Pim's day even more, and so he decides to clean it up. You know what I mean? He's doing it partly for himself. From here, the same shit happens, cause I actually liked everything from this point forward. Then, at the end, Charlie says some dumb shit about never littering again. It's very simple, but it gives them both something to do and gives the segment actual progression and conflict. All that said, I really did like Season 3 a lot, which I'm really happy about because the first video on my channel is actually a review for Smile and Friends Season 2, and it was just miserably negative. Like, I was very disappointed that I didn't like it. But this time, I actually really liked Season 3. It's still not as good as Season 1, of course. Like, it falls short of being as timeless as that one, but it's far from bad and definitely worth watching. Okay, I'm gonna go play Hollow Knight now.